All right. Welcome, everybody, back to part two of our holiday series. So, in this episode, we're diving into the complex dynamics that make holiday gatherings both beautiful and challenging in Latina families. So, we'll talk about familismo, navigating comments about food and bodies, managing comparisons and breaking free from the fear of weight gain that tends to spike this time of year. And of course, we'll unpack the pressure to shrink ourselves before January 1st and offer healthier, culturally grounded ways to approach the new year. And to kick us off with a disclaimer, I'm going to tap into Christina.
All right, everybody's favorite part. So, real quick plug this podcast is for informational purposes only and doesn't constitute any medical, nutritional, legal, or any other professional type of advice. The content is not intended to replace professional advice and it is recommended that you seek advice from a qualified professional if you are having any concerns while you're listening to us. Listener discretion is advised for younger listeners, and the views and opinions that are expressed are those of the hosts, guests, and anybody that makes an appearance here, and they do not reflect those of any of our employers, any organizations, or sponsors.
All
Back to
right.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, kicking it back to familismo and cultural values, this time of year, I think especially is when most of us, at least for myself, right, have like the most contact with my family or with those who I consider family. So I'm wondering, right, how familismo helps, right, and sometimes how it could complicate things and the holiday dynamics. But I'm wondering who wants to kind of touch on a little bit more about familismo, maybe what that might mean to them or what that means, in general, just to kind of give a little bit of an overview of what we talked about last time.
Yeah, I think I can go through because I gave kind of this standard definition, but I can kind of expand further. As in the last recording, I kind of shared to it being kind of a value system that emphasizes within the family kind of loyalty, closeness, just that deep connection with family. And it highlights this belief, right, that the family's needs as unity and well-being is, for sometimes it can be perceived or felt as that being more important or coming before the individual's needs. And so sometimes this can be seen or felt as whether it's a strength or a pressure, depending on how you view it or feel it, or how that system works in familismo. And I wanted to go further with this too, because I had some deeper thinking, because I always like to think a bit more of history with this, that it comes back from like the origins of this collective history. Because if we think back in time, it was not an easy time or era for many folks. There was a lot of survival, migration, colonization. And so I think my understanding with familismo is that it came through and got stronger because community was necessary for survival and to go through to keep us alive, keep us feeling sane, and working through agriculture and economics. So it was a net system for that piece. And so obviously times have changed, things have evolved so much with how our values are and what they're in. And so I think, yeah, it's good to talk about how that's different now, but with an understanding of where it came from for us to make that fit into our own lives. So I'll leave it with that.
Hmm. That makes me think of, what one of our missions here, right? Or one of our focus or intentions is really taking it back to our roots, right? Going in deeper and, your definition and just kind of highlighting the familismo in terms of like history, where it came from, the why. I think that really kind of ties into that. And in thinking of that, familismo could be a source of strength and pressure. Like I'm curious what has been you all's experience with familismo, right? And any, I think in any aspect and also like in the holiday season for you all, and how has that changed?
I feel like with piggybacking off of what Nico recapped, where it came from survivalism and community and just like sharing amongst each other, that really highlights the beauty of its origin, right? Where it's this warmth and connection, sense of belonging. But then things I think for me feel complicated when at the same time the message can kind of turn into this like either spoken or unspoken message of don't rock the boat, right? Like just say yes, your discomfort matters less than family harmony. And that's where I think for me personally, a lot of the tension has been felt, especially when in the holidays it comes to all of this food being centered, everybody's body is feeling on display a bit. Like, you know, when they have the sala parties and everybody's dressed to the nines as if they're going to this big grand thing, and really you're just kind of sitting there and everybody feels like they're trying to one up each other, or like, oh, look at how they're dressed. And familismo now becomes less about we're here for each other and together and more about who did it the best.
Like that.
And I don't know, I guess that's maybe kind of where pressure can feel like it stems from, where in the experiences I've had with gatherings, and you kind of just drop yourself lower and lower on your priority list, and it becomes about everybody except for you, and not so much of a unit anymore.
Yeah, that can make it really difficult.
Does anybody else have anything that they want to kind of add on to that?
Yeah, I can jump into like the food part. Like I think like for the holidays, obviously it's like very food centric, I think in general, but let alone I think like Mexican culture, we like plan when we're making tamales like 2 months in advance. Like we make sure everyone's calendar is available. And it's also been interesting. We just did our tamales on Sunday, but it's been interesting like the generation. So it's like my mom and her siblings, and then it's me, but then there's like probably like a 10 age year gap between me and my nieces and nephews, and then my siblings. And so it's interesting to see like the expectation that I'm there every single time participating and helping, but then like the youngers don't have to. It's like not the same requirement. So it's been interesting to see, or like even to think like how that will look like when it's their turn or not their turn, right? If they choose that or not choose that, to like kind of preserve the tradition or not, because the uppers, right, the elders are essentially getting ready to like start to pass it off. They start to have the conversation, and there is this expectation that like one of y'all is going to carry it, one of you is going to pick it up because we're tired and we're old, and you know we're ready to order tamales at this point if we have to make them again. So that part's interesting, of like the expectations around tradition, because it's not just this, it's like other things too, and how like even just within the same, like we're all the nieces and nephews, even within that there's like an age difference, and like how that shows up differently. I think for me, feeling a lot closer to my culture versus like my siblings who don't have the same proximity, and I think it's because they didn't, like I grew up with my grandma more. Like she would babysit me more. I was there at the house, and then 2 kids later, my mom was like, "Okay, we can't have your grandma do this. Let's do a babysitter." So I think there was some distance in that. So it's the kind of going to the question around like how traditions have changed over generations, even within like one generation, it's so different.
That makes me think of familismo as its own living organism that needs to live and breathe and adapt depending on how times or generations go. Because what you just shared, it brings feelings for me of like, well, there's a part of me that's like, well, I would love that tradition to stay. I hope it doesn't die out. And at the other end, well, I wonder if for the younger generations, there are other things going on for them. So that's a boundary setting on their end, or who knows what it is. So that brings that dualism there of like, do we keep it? Are we losing it? So it made me then think of just adaptation of like, what is it that each year, each moment, generation is needing to maybe maintain some sense of community and familismo, because that is a strength. I think with my case, with my family, I feel like we've been pretty adaptable every year. We will celebrate the holidays in different locations, depending on maybe our family needs in Florida needs to be seen more, so we all go there, or sometimes they come to see me if there's stuff going on here. And so that's something I do appreciate, is that flexibility while still trying to maintain unity and that sense of community and being together and closeness. Our food traditions definitely change depending on where we go, but we still emphasize on just enjoyment to the full abundance wherever we are, whether it's whatever state or country in the world.
I love that.
I think living, breathing organism, I think that's how I'm kind of viewing this too. with
Mhm. I know, and I always try to be mindful of like I don't think I felt that way necessarily at like
right.
21 or 30 or 25, right? To like preserve the culture of the family.
Mm,
And now that I'm older, it's like, okay, I can understand it and respect it more and like not respect it more, but just like participate in it differently. So I'm
Yeah.
also like trying not like I think for that where it's like, yeah, they can there's this part where they oh my god, my voice right now. This part where they can be flexible. But yeah, I hope later down the line where it's like we can be flexible and like even like doing stuff at different places. I'm like, oh my god, that'd be so wild if my family like started moving around, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
versus like, yeah, how do we preserve and like adapt and change
Right.
into what's even like when my my grandmother passed, we used to always do it at her house, and then it had to change, right? Like so we
yeah.
had to adapt, and it worked out fine. And it's like, how do you balance like yeah tradition in that, and then
You're right on perspective of the age where you're at socially, developmentally, and that plays a big role. And they're all just important too.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
might get to that too because I had that experience when I was younger. It was like, whatever, I'm just showing up, and now I'm like, ooh, like tell me, let me trace the roots. Why is this so important? How do I keep it alive? But in that, like we talked about how traditions evolve last time, and you talking about the tamales makes me think of, I don't know if y'all have been seeing on TikTok where people are coming up every year with these like new innovative ways and like homemade gadgets on how to make the process more simple or less labor heavy. And I think that like with the generations after that, like that's kind of their way of showing up, right? Like let me be a part of it, but let me help you make it better so that I understand it from my perspective, but we're still sharing in this like core memory.
I love that, Christina. I think that also, I think, and now I'm just kind of like putting the pieces together, and it's interesting, right? Because in it, we may not see it, but just when we take that step back and are able to reflect, we see all these moving pieces. But I just think of that circle of tamale making, right? Like you have one person like assembling the husks, the other person like putting the masa, the other person putting the rellenos or whatever, and then the other person like tying stuff. Like that just I think that right there is like the symbol of like familismo and unity, right? Because we each have different moving parts and all together collectively they create something at the end, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm wondering, like, sometimes familismo does create that pressure around, keeping the peace and saying yes to everything and just kind of being able to navigate that, right? Like the younger generations may not be in that space where they see, right, the necessity about being able to do these things or keep up with like these cultural values or beliefs. But it's like as we've gotten older, it sounds like collectively, like we've all had our own experience about recognizing, like, hey, like this is why, right? That one Tia would always tell us, like, come help cook us, help with us in la cocina, ¿verdad? Like, vente para acá, like, do this or that, right? I think seeing that value in it now, but I'm wondering, are there any other experiences or spaces that y'all have had where familismo has created that pressure around, saying yes to everything or keeping that peace during the holiday time?
I feel like saying no can make it feel selfish, like whether it comes to participating in making the food or eating differently than everybody else around you, stepping away, or like, if this happens, I'm gonna step out for some fresh air. That expectation within familismo that love equals compliance, and it makes you smaller. And for I think people that are either actively working with healing their relationships with food and or their body, that kind of pressure can show up as guilt or anxiety and leave you feeling like you're, I don't know, even beyond your family, be like betraying your culture. Oh, I'm not X enough anymore because I didn't do one, two, and three. And I think that's a heavy thing to try to kind of hold even within the time that thing is happening. And I think for people, it's really important to kind of reflect on, caring for yourself is not rejecting your culture. It's, if anything, making you still be able to participate and be present without sacrificing your own experience in whatever the activity is.
Mm.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you explained, Christina, with the TikTok videos and kind of modernizing in a way that this is an example of setting a healthy boundary, not necessarily like I'm just drawing this line and wall, but it's how can I still feel safe and like myself and healthy mentally, physically, and maybe incorporating a part of me with this tradition that's been about the same, but maybe I can evolve it. So I'm part of it and still being a part of this familismo while maybe honoring a part of me that is inputting here. So I think that's an example of a boundary, because I think it's really worth revisiting what boundary setting means. And it's not just one way.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna jump in and talk about, because I think a lot of like the social media content is very much about like they're not respecting my boundary. I told them to do this and they're not doing it. And like
Yeah.
boundary setting is for you to hold. Like, yes, you can inform someone and hope that they like remember it or hope that they can understand it, but ultimately it's you holding the boundary. It's you say, no, I'm okay with that. Even if they're like, for example, say your boundary is, I don't know, not putting more on your plate than you're actually hungry for, right? Like the very common, like, hey, would you want more? No, I'm going to put one on your plate. And like you not feeling, the need to have to like make yourself overly full, right? And so it's like, they're going to offer. That is the love language. Like they're going to continue to offer. They're going to continue to put it on your plate. They're going to give you leftovers to take home. And you can take that act of love without the consumption of it, right? In the moment, right? You can still honor your boundary and be like, no, like I'm good, but like I would love a to go box for this, or I would love, I'll take it to my neighbor, whatever the thing is, right? Like how to accept the gift while also still you holding the boundary. Because I think, yeah, social media kind of makes it like, oh well, they're not respecting my boundary, and there's this like rejection
Yeah.
almost. And then that person, but you're also then not giving the person any other way to love you, right?
Yes.
And I think that's especially the hard part, because they're just, I do it to my friends too. Like, I'm just trying to love on you. I'm trying to give you, oh, here, take this home, or I have extra beans, or, I bought too many tortillas. Like, here, take it, take it, take it. And it's them having to be like, no, I'm good, but like I appreciate that you're trying to like feed me, like, but like I know I need to eat all the food that's in my fridge, like I'm good. I'm like, okay, like that, I can understand that you're accepting it. You would accept this gift otherwise. Cool. And like, how do we practice that versus, oh, I'm just upset that they offered me more food because I already told them that, X, Y, or Z. Because I've noticed, especially when I worked in eating disorder treatment, that would happen a lot, where like they know I have an eating disorder, like why are they offering me food? And it's like, because they love you. They, you know what I mean? Like that is why. But how can you maybe educate them a little bit more of like how you want to be loved instead?
Right. I think it's an ongoing conversation between the parties involved on the boundary setting. Like it is your job to hold them, like you said, Stacey, but like your responsibility is not their feelings, right? You've communicated and given them a chance to enter into dialogue and action with you, so that you can both figure out moving forward what that's going to look like for both sides to be happy. And I don't know, with the boundary setting, sometimes with these holidays, love looks like staying for less time, right? You don't have to be there until 2, 3 in the morning because todos andan con la música and talking and el chisme, and
That's
you're
such a good one.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I
Yeah.
can't. Maybe I gotta bounce at 11 o'clock, and that's okay. You showed up and you participated.
Yeah. Oh, I love, that's such a good one. Because yeah, again, the thing is like they want to spend more time with you. They don't want you to leave because they actually really enjoy you.
Right.
And how like, I'm tired. Let's catch up tomorrow. Let's catch up next week. Like, let's go out. So, right? Like you're matching the love languages. You're just doing it or not love languages, but like the intention. And you still can go and take care of yourself and go to bed. Like you can still take care of yourself and not, take the extra plate or whatever. I like that. That one's so funny.
Yeah.
Because that one's a hard one for me.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like midnight. You're like, oh, I'm really, really tired now. And you've lost track of time because you didn't really just kind of speak for your body and your energy level right away. So I think practicing ahead and thinking of those scenarios ahead of time is helpful, because then if you're in the moment, like deer in the headlights, it can be really hard if you don't know how to navigate that and don't want to hurt someone's feelings.
Yeah. Remembering, right, the first time you try it, the first couple of times, it's probably gonna be uncomfortable, right? And being able to, ride that wave of uncomfortableness and remember that this practice is for yourself, right? And also you're providing some of that psychoeducation to your family too by your actions. And I think that all this conversation kind of ties into what I wanted us to get into next is navigating how we care for ourselves while upholding our cultural values that we deeply love, right? So I'm hearing boundary setting, but not only putting those boundaries and expecting, right? Because we can't expect these older generations who, you know, may not be so aligned with mental health and eating disorders or disordered eating and all these other, you know, concepts or ideas or diagnoses. Like, we can't expect them to understand boundaries like the first time around or the second time around, right? So it's really up to us, like Stacy, how you're saying, Nico and Christina, how you all were saying, for us to be like, you know what, I thank you so much for putting this extra tamale on my plate, but I'm actually, can I get some foil? I'm gonna save it for tomorrow for like the recalentada or something, right? Being able to be gentle and honoring yourself, what your body needs, what your mind needs, and then also letting them know, like, I love you, appreciate you for wanting to give me this food, but I'm actually gonna save it for tomorrow because I'm okay right now.
Yeah, I think oh my gosh, my voice. The gentleness, clearly I haven't spoken in like 5 days. The gentleness part I think is so important because I think when people come from a place that they're really still like activated or like
Yes.
triggered, it's so hard to be gentle when someone's like pressing on the boundary, right? And so really making sure whatever work you got to do, whether it's like practicing with friends, going to a therapist, like, I don't know, watching other people do it online, right? Because there's a bunch of, content for that. But it's like, yeah, like how am I not entering the space already like this, like already with my chest tight or already puffed up, like waiting for somebody to say some shit? Because, probably if you think they're going to say some shit, they are going to say some shit, whether intentional or not. And how do you stay grounded enough to be like, remember, I'm just going to take it home. I'm good. Thank you. So, like, making it light, like, be like, oh no, like, I'm good. And obviously, if they like keep pressing after that, then I'm like, say what you need to say with your chest then. But up until that point, it's like, yeah, how do we stay gentle? And like, I think a big part of that is like already coming in like practiced, grounded, like working that dialogue through. Because if you're just waiting for it and hoping for it not to happen, I feel like typically people will, for any situation, food or not food, honestly.
Very good point. First, check in with self. Like I would say, check your internal thermostat if you want to visualize it. Like, am I green, like in the lower end where I can just have a long conversation and maybe feel like explaining, or am I past the tipping point and I just need to take a deep breath and walk away for a moment, and everything in between? Very good point.
Yeah.
With check-ins.
Yeah, and I think someone put in the notes of like even just like asking like if you have like a cousin or a sibling or like a parent to like tap in if they see whatever someone's saying is uncomfortable. Like, let's say you do have that, like the very stereotypical tia who's like, oh, your boyfriend, oh, like, did you gain weight? Oh, that, and like having a buffer person to be like, Auntie, we don't talk about that no more. Like, we don't talk about weight gain. We don't talk about people's bodies, where like if the person is activated, that other person can kind of come in when their, thermostat is down and be like, we don't talk like that no more. And like, just, I don't know, help when that person is kind of like getting
I
all
like
neat.
that. You know, those comments, conversations, and comparisons, right? So I think, Stacey, just like what you're saying right now, like we've all experienced comments like vas a comer más or por qué no comes más, like you didn't like it or you on a diet, right? So in thinking of those, right, because with the holidays, I mean, it's more than likely going to happen. Some and might look different, right? But it's something that is pretty common. You know, I myself have experienced that really frequently, especially growing up. It's how do we think our listeners can prepare for those moments, right? And I think you all shared some pretty good, just kind of preparation points already, but tapping into like our experiences, either our own lived experiences or just in our professional work, like what are some ways that we can assist our listeners in preparing for those moments?
There's so many things.
Mhm.
I was thinking about the outsourcing piece, like having someone who's there. I think about my husband, my gringo husband. He's kind of my buffer sometimes. Like he just keeps things very like lighthearted and simple. He doesn't care. I mean, he doesn't care about body image issues too. So he's just like my great buffer. Because I've struggled in the past, and sometimes those thoughts pop up. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's just a little humorous break, or diverting the conversation at times, involving him. And so I think having another person's helpful. I think if you don't have that, I think where you're located in space is good. Like, hey, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'm gonna step outside and take a deep breath, check in with yourself, see if you need a little bit more or if this is just way too much. Um, yeah, those are some things I think about with ideas, examples, rather than having to think about a dialogue and things you have to express and say. If that's a lot for you, can I have a buddy? Can I have a person? Can I have something physical in my hand, something tangible, just to kind of
Mm.
divert that energy that's coming
Mm-hmm.
up?
Hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of it is also like you guys were saying, the practicing ahead of time on like what are those neutral prompts that are not going to activate you and make you feel like you're going into defense mode. And when you are stating things, like make sure that they feel like statements, right? Like you're not asking for it because you don't have to ask for permission to get the thing that's going to make you feel safe and like you can still participate. If it makes them feel uncomfortable, maybe that's a moment for them to pause and kind of like, huh, what just happened here?
Mm-hmm.
But if it isn't that person and you are able to practice ahead of time, that can help take the burden off of you because you're not still directing. You're passing it on while communicating what you need.
Mm-hmm. That's my favorite part
Mhm.
of therapy when we're like role playing and they're like, well, I think that, like, I think that's not, the thing that goes there. It's like, you think or
Yeah.
we think or we know. Who are we softening it for?
Mhm.
Because you're
Mhm.
acting like you don't know when you do know. Why are we doing that? And like, that's always the fun part because it's like, they're not used to either talking to that person like that or like just in general for themselves. They don't use that more affirmative dialogue because
Mhm.
it makes them uncomfortable to use more affirmative because typically there is this piece where it's like the other person's going to be like, wait, you don't talk like that. You don't
Mhm.
say like, I'm actually not going to do that. You go, oh, I don't know if I'll have time to do that, or like I think I should be able to, but I'm not sure. It's like, no, you can't do that. You can't do two things at once. So how do you how do you tolerate making somebody else not happy or uncomfortable and all of those things? And I think there's so much content around like eldest daughter stuff too,
Mm.
like doing everything and all of that, um and somewhat people pleasing part. And so it's like having like even just being aware of like how that plays in, because like I notice like how, again, I'm eldest daughter, so I notice how I get spoken to versus, or like required, not required but kind of required, expected to do something versus my brother who's the middle only boy in a Mexican family, so there's a
Mm.
whole slew of content around that if you don't know. And then my youngest sister who's 12 years under me, so she's a baby, so they're even just within that is so much expectation, difference of expectations of like um advice I would give if someone is
Mhm.
this stage or this stage.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially all of us as women, like I like please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're all taught like to be everything for everyone. So that assertiveness really sets your own value and your own needs too. Of like, I'm no longer the caretaker here. Like I'm only taking care of myself.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I noticed I didn't necessarily get too much pressure in that way because my dad was very helpful in the house, like watching
Mm.
him. But my mom, I still see my mom do it, even though my dad like doesn't necessarily like require it of her. Because like he cooks, he'll clean, he takes care of all of the out. His job is like the outside of the house. My mom's job is like the inside of the house. Um, but watching my mom try to do everything and then like burn out essentially, and then that when you burn out, you react towards other people differently, and having to be like, mom, you don't have to actually do that. Like having to like remind her, even as an adult, even as a mom, right? Like you don't actually have to do everything. You can like delegate things to everybody, and like no one will like think of it any different if you just let that thing
Mm.
go. essentially. Like it's okay if the stove isn't fully clean before everybody comes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And like what it's been interesting to like watch that whole process as an adult.
I feel that so much with delegation. I used to struggle with that. And I sometimes still do in other scenarios, like when I'm cooking and I'm like, it's easier just if I do it all than explaining what I need help with. But then after that, I end up feeling exhausted, not present when I'm actually sitting and eating with people. So yeah, that sits a lot well with me a lot because I learned that in the healthcare field, like how do I work with my colleagues? And then you got to apply that everywhere else too. And I think that does come
Mm.
deeply rooted as being a female, the nurturing, got to do it all with a smile on my face and being really nice and gentle. And but within me, inside me, I'm like, nah, I just want to yell and sleep or both. Yeah.
Those unspoken expectations, right? That I think they're so deep rooted as either being the older sibling or the woman of the house, right? Like they're there. Even if we try to break them, like they still somehow show up in a way, right? And this kind of comes back to, what are some ways to set those boundaries, right, without escalating conflict? I know we kind of dabbed into that right now a little bit more, but is there anything else that we feel like we can kind of add on to that?
I would just add role playing. I love role playing because it's like you're literally practicing saying it with your mouth and you're using dialogue. My hope for my clients is that you don't sound like me. You sound like you. Obviously,
Yes.
you could. I'm gonna pump it up a little bit and ask you to be more assertive, but like ultimately, it needs to sound like something you more or less would say. Because if you're just, I've like heard clients they'll like say a sound bite that I know they heard on Instagram or TikTok, and I'm like, that's not even some like that's not your boundary. They're like, well, like what? I'm trying to think of like a pop culture therapy kind of, I guess, like boundaries. Like, well, they're not honoring my boundaries, so I cut them off. It's like, but did you tell them they were breaking your boundary like more than once, or did you
Mm-hmm.
just tell them once and expect them to follow? So when they did it again next time, because they're used to, I don't know, doing that every time they see you, what's happening, right? And so it's like not coming from them, and I think wanting to make sure, even if they do find something on Instagram or TikTok that they find useful, it's like, okay, but you still have to make that your own. Just like what I'm saying, like how do you still, if you like that concept, how do you make it your own, and how do you literally practice that with somebody? Because when then it's kind of like the same thing with visualizations, right? Like you're prepping the body
Mm-hmm.
to have these conversations. So it's like, oh, I notice my chest tightening even when I'm just telling, practicing with my friend about it.
Right.
And it's like, okay, does it need to be that scary? Or does it need to be that scary? Do I need to prep myself and all of those? So I would say role play
Yeah. And
the
if you don't know
conversation.
what to say, 'cause sometimes I struggle with a statement that's not repetitive what I always say. Like, I mean, it's okay to get examples, but make sure it's not over explanation too. Cause I think that's another piece too, is like maybe as women, we tend to over explain and it's just a way to compensate and not feel so bad about setting this boundary. But then you just end up getting exhausted and then that boundary gets lost in all of it too. And so make sure when you're going through the role play that it's not an over explanation because that's exhausting too. That it's something simple like estoy escuchando mi cuerpo, I'm listening to my body, or I'm okay, estoy bien, gracias. Very simple things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big repeater. So like, nope, I'm good. Did it. And they'll be like, but did it. Nope, still good.
Yeah.
Thank you though. Oh, but are you sure? Like, what if you're going to be hungry later?
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Still good.
Yeah. I think feel like because there's so much food, like if you know ahead of time what the spread is going to look like and there's something there that either makes you feel uncomfortable or that you would want, like bring it. Nobody's
Mm.
telling you you can't have your own food as well. And when you're getting nervous about making that plate, have that safe person with you. Oh, can you come make a plate with me? If you see that this person is the one you're focusing on, you're not going to be worried about what everybody else has on their plate and then start comparing yourself. You're going to get everything you wanted
Hmm.
in whatever order that you want. If you want
Yeah.
the cake first, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that made me think of too, where it's like in our culture where it's very much like food centric and like food. I don't necessarily like the word food pushing, but like it is like food giving, excessive giving maybe. Um, but then there's also this like very diet culture, like, oh, you're gonna eat all that? Like, oh, she hungry,
Hmm.
or like, oh, that's a full plate. Like, oh, leave food for everybody else. Like those kind of like little jokes, which is so, you're getting it both ways. And like how I remember being younger and not like knowing how to respond to those things because I was like a very like scrawny kid growing up, and then finally hitting like puberty and like finally putting on weight, people were like, oh, like, and then obviously you eat like a ton in high school because I was growing. And it's like, I remember really that's, I think, part of what got me a little bit more interested in like what got me into eating disorders was like women's perception of themselves, like specifically how they feel about their bodies. Um, and losing my train of thought. Oh yeah, and having to not understand what was happening. Of like, well, you're telling me this, and then you're telling me this, and then my body's doing its own thing that I don't have control over. So like, which one do you want me to do? You either want me to eat more or you want me to eat less. What's the conversation, right? And like having to not actually ask that question, but having to think a bit about it for myself. And I can imagine when someone is doing that more overtly at like the dinner table while you're portioning your food, it's like, yeah, what can your response be? Or like, does it need to be in the moment or does it need to be after the moment? Or, like how having to weigh how much energy you actually want to put into someone who says shit like, not shit like that, but things like that.
Speak it.
Well,
Right.
sorry. While you're talking, I'm thinking of like what would my response be, and this may or may not be the best thing, like depending on your tone. It's like, well, good thing this plate is for me, right? Like I'm the one eating it. You don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And if they dig deeper, like, what about your health? And it's like, well, health is way more complex than what because we tend to generalize. And I think in the healthcare
Yes.
field, that gets misused too.
Mm-hmm.
Like one statement becomes this just umbrella term. And it's like, no, there's so much more within it. Like the same amount of food has a different impact on different people because we're so diverse.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a little context, right? To be like, well, hey, this is what I know what I need for my health, my individual body, or if they talk about health, it's like health is way more complex and do I eat this or not?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think I go back from the medical point of view because I try to help people unlearn that because I get so ingrained with good, bad, yes, no. Like, hey, no, these are just tools, like the information that's provided about
Mm-hmm.
what things in moderation or things that's totally fine in abundance is okay with. But those are just tools. They're not absolute truths about what really is good. And health is not about that
Mm-hmm.
either. We don't account for culture, stress, trauma. Those things need to be fed and cared for too. And we can't measure that all the time in medicine.
I love that, Nico. I think this also just kind of is a great segue for us to focus on, right, challenging those weight-centric messagings that do come about right now in this time of year, right? This fear of weight gain. Like, why is it so common, especially I think in like our culture, right? And what would we say to someone who is terrified of weight changes after the holidays? Because I think of like New Year's, I think of Christmas. I'm already
Mm-hmm.
thinking of like New Year's like resolutions, right? We see all these like fad diets. We see all like everyone's like all of a sudden running around and like, walking, going to the gym, like doing all these things. And like that's some scary stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I think this is where I like to, again, step out the history, origins. I'm sorry for everyone if you're like, oh, another origin, but it's helpful because it's like, where the heck is this all coming from? And it's like, well, we
yeah.
know social media, family comments, where those comments come from. It's not like we were born with that and we just know to say those things. It's all learned behavior from messaging within the family, medical field, social media. So I think stepping out to understand and just validate those scary feelings like, oh, I'm scared of weight gain. Validate the feelings without truly believing that it's actually true and maybe test it. Be like, do I know that's actually true? Do I know that's bad? And keep challenging that thought. And just understand, that our bodies do change. We can't keep everything cookie cutter. It's part of being human, especially based on the seasons, our age, and heck, just the holidays. Our body's going to change because of the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
So stepping out at first to see the context behind where this came from, because it's not this known truth. It's just learned culture that is an unhealthy culture that we just need to unlearn.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think too, like I like going into the like, and then what? Like, what happens if that happens? Like, and that's where like the deep kind of what Nico's talking about, like the deeper education, because like we could do a CBT skill, so you can be like, okay, like, is that true? You know, is that true? Okay, if it's not true, like, am I going to gain weight by eating, you know, this pastry in the moment? No. Okay, well, we can do that, but at the end of the day, it's like, what's the deeper understanding of like, okay, well, what happens if you gain weight? You might. Like,
Yes.
you might gain weight. There's more tasty foods around this season that you like. You might not be doing as much movement because you're going to more parties or more events, or
Yep.
you're just tired. And then what? Right. And then that's where it's like, how do we talk about the like the fat phobia basically within those conversations? And like, okay, is that a belief that you align with? Is that a belief you don't align with? Do you feel confused by that belief? Do you want to have, you know, like, do you want that belief to keep having meaning for you? And then how do you find community who doesn't have those beliefs, right? Because I think that's the hardest part for all of my clients is like, me and them could know that this is not the thing
Yep.
that we want to be thinking about, but as soon as they step out and they have their friends or their family who are dieting, who are on Ozempic, who are just even making just comments all the time, or you know, aesthetics, um, how can they do well if their only surrounding people are so diet culture invested? And it's like,
Mm.
yeah, how do you find community who's not that? And there are people, because everyone's like, well, all of my friends. I was like, there's people who aren't. Like, I know I work in this field, and most of my friends are all therapists, so I feel very, you know, lucky for that. But like, there are people who are also just like not in eating disorder world, or that are rejecting of diet culture, because it really is um, like the decolonization of it all, right? Like they're actually trying to or Nico, maybe you want to talk about this a little bit more. Like we're not trying to subscribe to Eurocentric standards, right? At the end of the
Mm.
day,
Right. To one type of body that is the ideal, that is the dominant culture, the dominant gender, etc. Right.
mm-hmm.
I'm a Latina mixed with European, yes, blood
Mm-hmm.
and body shapes, but I'm also Nicolette living in Colorado at the age that I'm in,
Mm-hmm.
36. And so my body's going to look different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's my body, not everybody else's. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of that too, like what you said, Stacey, about like there are people that are already open to this. I challenge my patients and clients to like, you know, who are you surrounding yourself around to begin with, right? Like, are you yourself open to this other thought of mind? Are you even with like body shape and diversity, like your family, your friend groups, your social groups, do you see diversity in body shapes and sizes? If not, let's ask ourselves why, and not with shame or guilt, right? This is not to say you're a bad person for it. It's all through years and years of conditioning, diet culture, and all of this stuff. And it's like welcoming, validating, and then challenging the fear of weight and examining the desire for weight loss and why we have felt that that is the only thing that's going to provide us value and dignity when your health and your value are not depending on staying in the same body 365 days of the year, right? This
Mm-hmm.
holiday season is one very small percentage of your whole life.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen after?
Yeah.
With that, I'm wondering, right, what are some alternatives, you know, self-compassion ways to approach the new year that we could think of, right, that are not so centered in trying to focus on weight loss or shrinking ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I'm just like that's just something that's so cyclical and repetitive. Like we see it every year, right? The gym's like booming, you can't get in because everyone all of a sudden, like January 1st, ahí están todos, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering what are some ideas that we could approach the new year that are not rooted or centered in trying to fit into these Eurocentric molds of bodies, right, or diet culture.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first one that comes to mind is like I think of like the whole like La Sala scene, like where it's like everyone's
Yeah.
dressed up, and it's like so many times people are dressed up in like tight clothes that are uncomfortable with their the faja thing, like, and it's like, how are you gonna eat in that? Like, right? And I think a lot of it, like, obviously you can still want, like, I still like dressing up for the holidays. That's fun for me. But it's like, am I putting on clothes that makes my, welcome back, makes my body, like, am I putting on clothes that makes my body feel comfortable for whatever I'm experiencing, right? And you can
Yeah.
still look nice and wear something that feels comfortable opposed to wearing something that's like tight that you're literally constricting yourself in because like everyone brings out like the really every so many people, so many of my friends, it's like, okay, I gotta, I need to get my faja. I forgot my faja, or whatever the things are, and it's like you don't also have to wear those things as a way to take care of yourself if it doesn't make your
Hmm.
body feel good. Because even if you're going to some place that's not like that's so neutral and your clothes are not comfortable, it can be a bra strap, it can be pants, it can be a rock in your shoe. You're
Hmm.
miserable. It's
Uh,
that's all you can focus on, right? So it's like, why are we doing that to ourselves, especially around a holiday that might be more complicated or triggering? How do we not trigger ourselves already entering into the building? So I'm always like, where they're like, well, I don't have any clothes that feel comfortable. I was like, well, then let's go get some.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, why
I
would you
will
put on the
say,
clothes that you don't like?
Stacey, my husband must have like known that we were gonna talk about this because that fool shrunk my faja yesterday. Like literally, like my smooth. I took it out of. I was gonna fold it. I was like, babe, what is this? And it's like mirror. And I was like, and he was like, I know I shrunk it by I was like, this is like the third one, but that's okay. I was like, I think this is a sign that, I have to retire this and just remember that my body ebbs and flows, and it has. I have embraced this body at almost 300 pounds. I have embraced this body at as little as like 150 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm embracing it right now at like 180, and that's just what my body is. It ebbs and flows, just like our lives do, and that is something that we have to come to realize, like, it's okay, right? Our body carries us through so much in our lives that faja chow is just going to keep you from being able to enjoy that delicious plate of food, from being able to enjoy those experiences that are being held with your family or friends, right, that you may not be able to get back, right, anytime after that. And do we really want to be like, damn, I was crabby because the damn faja's like cutting off my circulation and I can't breathe and I can't enjoy and I can't be present because I'm thinking about it? Or am I going to liberate myself and be like, you know what? I'm going to wear this like cozy, like legging or like stretchy top, like, and I am going to be present and enjoy and be there with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I feel good, right? I feel
Yeah, like
comfortable.
physically feel good. I feel like we could do an episode even just like on the medical complications of when people wear like
Oh
constricting
yeah.
things like that. Like
Girl,
especially for because
yes.
especially women are, um,
Oh yeah.
I
I
don't
was
know, more stereotypically wearing those things and like the acid reflux and all of, even
I was
like
just saying
high
the
waisted
GI
jeans.
system in and of itself. We can talk about the gut and
I'm
way too
sorry.
much around
Oh,
it.
Nico, we can't hear you.
Oh,
Oh,
oh, I think
Oh,
I
we can
can.
hear her.
Oh, I can't hear him.
Oh,
Oh,
oh
Is it
no.
just me?
Can you hear me now?
mm-hmm.
yeah.
I
Okay.
was just saying, especially
Okay.
for the digestive system, like constricting that pore area. But
Yep. Yep. And I will say on the topic of like this whole resolution stuff, I just like start very broadly on like how about we reframe resolutions to what are our intentions going to be for the new year, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
resolutions feel so outcome focused and rigid, and they can be like very consuming about control. These types of like it's black and white, I either succeeded or I failed. But when you focus on intentions, it's really turning it more into like a values based type of flexibility, and you focus on how you want to show up and not on what that specific outcome is going to be, because we all know, right, like in eating disorders nothing is linear, and whatever a b c type of road you take to get there doesn't matter as long as you achieved what made you feel good along the way. And who knows, the outcome might change throughout the way.
that's a good way to ask for goals. If we're wanting to set a goal like everybody else, because that's normal. You're reflecting on your year and you're like, what can I build from that for the next year? But based on what feels good to me, you're like, what is
Mhm.
going to feel good to me? Is it having more energy? Is it having more sleep? Is it having more of this type of yummy food? Feeling stronger? Whatever it is, that's much better and I think effective than what do I think I should be doing compared to other people too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's all.
Love it. I think hopefully if folks have any questions, I know they can post that in our pages or reach out to us. I know there's so much to cover in the holidays too.
Yeah.
So um,
We can have a bunch of spin-offs off of this conversation alone, but you know, I don't know if you can hear us, Veronica. If not, well, we can just kind of like take it from there. And I hopefully you guys heard either a lot of things that resonated with you or things that are making you start to have thoughts on how you're preparing for these last 2 weeks of the month. And thank you so much for joining us for this part two and closing out of our holiday series. Hopefully these conversations remind you you're not alone. We're all trying to navigate these dynamics and cultural expectations. Don't forget, you have permission to step into the new year guided by your values, not fears. And thanks for being part of this little community we're trying to grow.
yeah,
We'll see you next time.
see you all. Bye.